Evening booktube. So I was gonna wait until tomorrow to film this, but you guys probably won't see it until some point tomorrow anyway, if you once it gets uploaded. So I'm just gonna film it now, where there's still a little bit of light. But I finally was able to go to the pool this evening, and then my mom decided to, because now with the whole pandemic going on and everything, with our community pool, you have to reserve a time when you're gonna go there. So, she reserved for a 5 o'clock pool time for us, and then we came home. I got all my stuff to got myself cleaned up and ate dinner. I just got done eating dinner, but tomorrow we're gonna have an early pool time around like 9:30 is when we're gonna go. So, it isn't bad. It's just that the next day I'm gonna have to get up early again because I'm supposed to be at work at 8:30, I think. So, not that that's a big deal. I mean, because it's not like, tomorrow I'm just going to the pool, just chilling in the pool and swimming and stuff. So, it's not like I'm doing, like, work until like, Wednesday. I think it's Wednesday. Yeah, I think Wednesday is when I'll go back to work. I'll work Wednesday and Thursday, and then I'm actually off during the weekend, so that's awesome. But, so I'm kind of getting back into the swing of things. Like I said on my last video, my reading is coming back. I was worried for a second that I was going to experience my first slump. But, it's not a big deal. I mean, if I got in a slump, then, it's okay. Everyone's constantly talking, everyone says that if you get in a slump, it's not that big of a deal. It happens. But I didn't, still, you still want to kind of, or at least I like being able to say I've never been in a slump before. I like to be able to brag that hasn't happened to me. So I kind of getting back into it, but still slow, and I've started quite a few books. Like the 3 I just showed you and hopefully the thumbnail. But, and the problem is I'm also feeling guilty because there's books that I probably have had for a long time that I should be starting a books in series that I need to get into the next book in the series, like, soon. Because some of them are becoming TV shows, and, but when I ended up deciding to do a reread, my third reread of Jane Eyre, because I got this lovely edition. I just love these colorful editions. These are Arcturus Publishing Limited, I think that's what it's called. And I want to say the publishing company is in England, but I'm not 100% sure on that. And of course, I told Katie from Books and Things when I made a comment on her video about it, when I think she was talking about like her favorite editions of classics. And sorry, I hope you guys did not see that, but drool spit kind of came out of my mouth. But I commented on her video, and she, commented back to me. And I was trying to explain this type of edition and where the publishing company, and I thought that maybe it had something to do with a publishing company in the UK, but I'm not 100% sure on that, and I will feel really dumb if it turns out that's not the case. But, I love these colorful editions. I'm big, yes, I love, editions that, the aesthetic, like, fits it, because this is kind of not the most happy book. I mean, it does end happy. If you guys have read this, it does end happy for the main character. But it's a little, although it's not as depressing it's not as tragic as, like, let's say, Wuthering Heights or something, but, or Romeo and Juliet. But, like, I mean, some people could say that this aesthetic doesn't necessarily fit, although it's not that bright. It's not like happy colors. It's not like yellows and greens and stuff. It's still very dark colors, and it's like a drawing. It's like a drawing or something, which I really love. And I have quite a few of these actually. Like I think like two or three Dickens in this edition. Yeah, three Dickens books now in this kind of edition. But I'm up to chapter 14 in this one. And Jane is a governess to Adele, and Rochester has finally returned to his home, and she just had her first encounter with him. And like reading it again, see, this is, reading it again, I remembered why he's kind of been demoted on my list of favorite period drama men, because he's kind of a jerk. He's not the nicest guy. I mean, in Jane's defense, I think because she didn't get a lot of love growing up, and the people that have showed love to her or would have shown love to her died. So I feel like it's understandable that she kind of fell in love with Rochester, because he's one of the few people in her life that shows her affection and love and is passionate and falls passionately in love with her for who she is, and she with him for who he is. Even though, a lot of modern women will be like, why? I mean, the dude lied to you and the dude lied to you. He can be kind of mean and disrespectful towards you. Of course, how women were treated back then. I mean, but yeah. So he's not necessarily my favorite, but I still love the story. I love the book, and I also love that these two, despite the fact she's considered plain, he's considered not very handsome, and they both are very flawed people, they still fall in love despite it all. I think is why everyone loves this story, because one of the reasons, it's about this woman's strength and how she and this man love each other despite that, they're not ideal, like, as far as attractiveness, or like, and they're flary, flawed human beings, especially him. And he's and he is a very romantic and passionate man. And I definitely go back and forth with him. And once Jane finds out the truth about Rochester and his little secret in the attic, she still sticks to her principles, and she ends up, doesn't stay, even though he begs her to stay and to be with him. She leaves. She chooses to walk away from him, but she still holds on to her love to him, and doesn't betray him and give her heart to someone else or marry someone else. She stays loyal to him, even though sometimes it's like, you could do better, Jane. But at the same time, could she do better? Would people let her do better? I mean, maybe even the other guy she meets. I mean, the problem with him is he didn't love her. He does not love her. There's no passion between, and Jane wanted love and passion, and she didn't want just a practical marriage. But and I also find myself definitely more interested in the beginning part, when she's at Lowood, when she's living at Lowood, and she goes to that school and everything, and Helen's influence on her as a human being. And then it's so I feel like the relationship between her cousin, the cousin, John Reed. I mean, he almost feels worse in the book. I mean, he's in the book talks about how he was not just an asshole to Jane, but he was very disrespectful to his mother too. But the mom totally spoiled him, and he was her little prince and everything. But so it's interesting kind of reading it now, and I mean, I've read it before, but it's I feel like every time if I when I have reread books, all of a sudden, for me personally, it's like I rediscover it all. And a lot of times I don't reread that often, so it's like, with the exception of Harry Potter, I don't always remember everything. That's why I reread, because sometimes I don't remember these things. I know the basic premise, and Jane Eyre, I have a movie version, I think it came out in 2011, and then I saw the beginning of the 1994 or 96 movie starring not John Hurt, but the other guy that I can't remember, the blonde actor. I cannot remember his name. He was in the movie Michael with John Travolta. John Travolta was like an angel, the Archangel Michael, and I can't think of his name. I can picture him. I can't remember him. I mean, he was in one of the that stupid Google message popped up again. But he was also in I think Captain America, one of the event. I think it was Captain America. He was in that one. The actor I'm trying to think of. But anyway, he played Rochester in the movie, and I don't think that's the best choice for Rochester. I mean, like, and then, although the actress was okay, I didn't see the whole movie, but I thought the little bit of the movie I saw, the actress was pretty good. She was good. And then, I never saw the black and white one with Syrian. I think it was Syrian Hines played in Rochester. And then I love the '85 version with Timothy Dalton. And I, of course, love the 2011 version. That's the one I actually have on DVD. And then there's the 2005 miniseries, which I love too. And I love Ruth Wilson and Toby Stephens as our two leads. And I think that's the one with, that's the one with Georgie, the girl from the Narnia movies. She plays Jane as a little girl. And I want to say Aunt Petunia is also in it. The actress who plays Aunt Petunia from Harry Potter. I think she plays Miss Reed in that one. So, but anyway, I like that version too. So the ones that I love are the 1985 one, the 2011, and the 2005 versions of Jane Eyre. Yeah, of course, neither of those movies is gonna, like, I know that every time Terry and I talk about this, she's always talking about how, like, the character, like, Rochester is always too handsome, he's too good looking, and of course, I always tell her that, beauty is the eye beholder, are what attracts us today is not necessarily what would have attracted them back then, and they're not going to cast someone that's labeled as they think is ugly to play the characters. They'll get as close as they can to someone that might not be considered the most, someone that will have the exact features that are described in the book. Someone that you can, like a woman, an actress that you can make her look plain. Like Mia Wasikowska, because she's so fair-skinned, just with her and, just her physical appearance, you can make her look a little more, quote-unquote, plain. And then Ruth Wilson, I think they did a pretty good job of making her look plain, too. But I feel like you're never going to be able to find someone that's ever exactly, like, considered exactly unattractive, because, like, again, our tastes are different. These are modern, not modern set stories, but they are movies that are made now. So they're gonna, and everyone in Hollywood, whether you're, like, one of those people who does only stuff on TV, or if you're someone, or if you're part of the Hollywood scene, no one in Hollywood is unattractive. I mean, there's some people that are more attractive to others, to us, but no one in Hollywood is not going to be considered unattractive, But anyway, so it's just, yeah, for me personally, I like rereading. As long as I space out my rereads of a book, then it will feel like I'm reading it for the first time, and I'm rediscovering it if it's been long enough. And it was kind of even more, I definitely paid more attention to the beginning of the book when Jane is living with her aunt, and then she goes to Lowood. And there's a surprising quote, something in here that I noticed. When Jane gets put into the Red Room because, as punishment, let me see if I can find it. There's something here that I feel like is kind of meant to be a foreshadow. Something past. Okay, so in this scene, she's in the Red Room, and I think she's, like, it would be the equivalent to a modern panic attack. She's, really upset. They haven't given her much to eat or drink. She thinks the room's haunted, so she's freaking out, and she eventually passes out. And I think Jane is very delirious or something, and she's having, like, hallucinations or something, or like someone saw something because they think the room's haunted. And she's overhearing this conversation between two of the maids, two of the Reed servants. Something passed, all dressed in white, and vanished. A great black dog behind him, 3 loud raps in the chamber. a light in the churchyard just over the grave, etc., etc. And I'm wondering if that is in reference to the future. Like it's foreshadowing what's to happen to Jane because where her life is going to end up. Because Rochester has this pet dog called Pilot, and I think he's described as a big black dog. And Rochester casts a pretty long shadow over her. She's a very petite young woman. And I think some of the other parts, like 3 loud raps on the camera, a light in the churchyard just over the grave, I think those also kind of represent like our foreshadowing or something. I would have to think about it, but I want to say this whole quote is kind of a reference to what's to come, what's going to happen in Jane's life. I love that I was able to catch that. I feel so proud of myself because there are so many booktubers that are able to recall all these details and point out things and recall, and they remember to take notes and recall quotes and stuff in the book. But like, and this is also why I don't annotate my books. Not because I have a problem with writing your books, because I don't. I mean, I highlighted that quote and I've written a few comments here and there throughout this book. But the problem is I have to stop reading and take the note. And sometimes certain books, like especially like mass market paperback editions, it's very hard to write in those. Like write little notes here and there. And then I don't also want to have to take the time to get out a notebook and take notes at the same time. I just want to read my book and enjoy it and relax. But I am one of those people who just like those people in the in the audience of a movie where they're like, "Don't go in there. Why are you doing that? Stay out of there, you idiot." All that kind of. Well, I'm definitely one of those people who will. I will do that with shows and movies, but I will also do that with books. Like I'm yelling at the book, yelling at the pages, even if the characters aren't physically in my presence, and I don't actually literally see. I can't really see them. But I am definitely one of those people who, although no, I've never thrown my book across the room before, but I have done something I don't want to. Slamming it down on me because I'm annoyed or something. Like I did that with Finale, the 3rd book in the Caraval series, the final book. Like there were a couple moments of that are kind of but never throwing a book across the room because I don't want to have to go searching and figure out my own pages in the book. But yeah, that she's just met Rochester and he's very in the scene, he's very much, just kind of rude to her, and he talks about how it's kind of her fault. When I watch it in the movie, I find it kind of amusing, but then at the same time, it's kind of a jerk. He's kind of being an ass to her. And of course he just says, "Well, that's just how I am, so you're gonna have to deal with it. I'm sorry, this is just who I am. I'm cranky and mean." But he gets kind of snippy. And I remember there's a line in the movie during this scene, the 2011 movie where he gives, although he gives her a lot, he gives Adele a lot more gifts. I think they're described as that he gives her a lot more things, but he gives her this I want to say either a dress or a doll or something, and he's like, "Take it away and disembowel it" or something. But he's just very snippy with her, with Jane and stuff, but the good news is she can keep up with him. She's is not someone she's a little timid, but not timid. She's not in a she's scared of him. Kind of it's she just is being an obedient, an obedient servant. She's being submissive, but not she's at the same time, she's someone who knows herself and is confident in herself, and that's how society is. She accepts it, but she's also not someone to be easily pushed around either. So it's very, the romance is not relationship goals, but it's very interesting. And I just reading about it. I am also, okay, so originally I was reading David Copperfield, because I wanted to get that read first, because it's in first person, and Katie from Books and Things, I remember her saying, in some of her recommendations, when she's talking about Dickens and stuff, she has said that if you want to get into Dickens, you should start with books like Great Expectations or David Copperfield, because those are written in first person. And so, and Dickens is someone who has a lot of characters in his novels, and so much going on, so much plot going on. But because both David Copperfield and Great Expectations are in first person, you mostly stick with the one character. You don't spend there might be other plots going on in different characters that our main character interacts with, but we are mostly in that one character's perspective in both those books. So it's a good, she says that it's a good place to start, unless you want to start with some of his short stories, because he writes short stories, and little novellas and stuff. And she also, for example, she also says you could potentially start with A Christmas Carol, because you're bound to have seen the movie adaptation at least once of Christmas Carol. So the story is universally known. Everybody's familiar with it. The quotes are very familiar, and the way we look at Christmas today is, it was inspired, I believe it was inspired by Dickens himself. People in England, until he published A Christmas Carol, people in England did not see Christmas as a big deal. I mean, it was a big deal in a sense that it was the birth of Jesus and all that if you're Christian, but it wasn't as, we didn't celebrate it they did not celebrate the way we celebrate today, and Christmas Carol is kind of the reason why we celebrate Christmas the way we do now. And funny, and so because of that, so I was reading David Copperfield because it was easy to, and also in the movie The Man Who Invented Christmas, which is about the writing of A Christmas Carol and how it came about and stuff, he mentioned there's an Easter egg for David Copperfield. He actually meets someone who says their name is David Copperfield, and throughout the movie we learn that Dickens would write down names that he liked so that he could use them in his books. He would have a list of names and stuff, and he meets this police officer towards the end of the movie, and the guy says his name is David Copperfield. So that was actually why I was like, oh, you know what, I should start reading David Copperfield. I've been meaning to do it. It took me a little bit of time to start it, but I finally did. But then it's definitely chunkier than Great Expectations. So I stopped and decided, I was thinking about once I finished David Copperfield, what was my next Dickens I was going to read, and it was caught between one of the two books that I had bought in this kind of edition. It was between those two, so which were The Pickwick Papers and Bleak House. And I decided I'm going to save Bleak House for October, and then I decided to start with this one, and then maybe I will get back into reading David Copperfield, because I have I think, let's see, July, August, September. I have 3 months before October. So, and I could always start, and if anything, I could start reading Bleak House in September and still include it as a book to read for October. But so I'm gonna save that for then, and I decided to go with the Pickwick Papers, which is basically about, the impression I get is it's about these group of men led by this guy named Mr. Pickwick, and I think they run, I don't know if it's a newspaper or something, or where they do, I think they're constantly looking for stories to put in there. And the first couple chapters, you meet them, and one of them, Mr. Tracy Tupman, he is at a party, one of the other guys, and he's hosted by a Mr. Slammer, who's a doctor, and Tupman is being really friendly and flirtatious, and Slammer gets kind of jealous and feels threatened by this guy. So the next day, he finds the guy in the coat he wore that night and he accuses this one guy of insulting him, and that is Mr. Winkle, I think. And he thinks he's the one that insulted him, so his lawyer or whatever shows up and challenges and says Dr. Slammer challenges you to a duel, but then when Mr. Winkle and Mr. Snodgrass, I think that's who he was with, they show up, and then Dr. Slammer's like, oh, you're not the guy I was looking for. And so, but then they immediately forgive each other and become friends, and he invites them, and he has a fight. Winkle invites him to meet him and his friends, which includes Mr. Pickwick, but then he recognizes Tupman as the guy at his party that insulted him. And then the last part I read was they are going to meet this other guy, and they end up going on, like, and they try to get a carriage, but there's not enough because there's like 3 or 4 of them. So 2 of them sit in the carriage. Pickwick ends up being the person that drives the carriage, and then Winkle, who's scared of horses, he ends up having to ride on a horse. But then they lose control of the carriage, and the horses escape and stuff, and now they're hitchhiking to this guy's house. And I am sure there are people like Katie from Books and Things and Kate Howe who could describe that a little more eloquently than I could. And it probably sounds a little less awkward and this, and I think this happened, and blah, blah, blah. I'm just so, like, in my head I sound great and sound very intellectual, and, like, I sound like I know what I'm talking about. I'm not, like, an American, like, and I don't say like all the time. But this actually is the first, like, today was the first time I was able to, like, pay attention to what I was reading. Because I took this with me on my break, to work, and I read a little bit during my break, my 15-minute break. But then I feel like with Dickens, it's kind of hard because if there's too many distractions, like they have the TV on in the break room and then other people are in there talking, I feel like with Dickens, I have to concentrate. I have to absorb all the words because there's so much going on, so many words. And then this, like I said, this is one of the, like with the exception of Great Expectations of David Copperfield, this is like, there's so many characters. You're not in first person. You're going around with several characters. So I definitely feel like you gotta pay attention. You gotta really focus on what you're reading and take it in, and you can't have too many distractions. One of the things I really love about Dickens is his names. I think his names are so quirky and interesting. A lot of the characters, I think, their names, they're given the names that they're given for a reason. Like, they kind of represent who the character is and their personality and stuff like that. Now, I don't know about the names of the characters, but, they're very quirky and funny sounding. Like Snodgrass, Mr. Winkle. And also, I have to think, okay, how old are these guys supposed to be? Because whenever, like, in the 21st century, people don't they address their elders or people and authority figures as Mr. or Miss. But back then, that you did it until you married that person, if you married that person, then yeah, you could call them either by their Christian name, but most of the time when people address someone, they always call them by Mr. or Miss so-and-so. And then calling someone by their Christian name was more intimate, I believe. Which is basically their Christian name being like their first name. But I just love the names. But whenever I read, I have to think how old they are because I like to picture actors that I could see playing these parts as I'm reading a book like this. So I'm thinking, okay, are I kept thinking at first I was thinking these are old, but then I thought, I was like, wait, they might not be that old. They might be like in their 20s or something. 20s or 30s at the oldest. So I was thinking about actors that are kind of in that age range. Although Mr. Pickwick might be a little bit older. Mr. Pickwick might be in his 30s. I don't know. I think this is Pickwick. This is supposed to be Pickwick. But I was trying to think of, actors that have the same kind of build as Pickwick, because he's described as a bigger man. So I was trying to think of actors that have that kind of build that I feel like could be that part, could play that part if this was a movie. The way it's written, I don't know if it could ever be a movie or even a miniseries. Like maybe a TV series. It could be, yeah. It could be a TV series if they wanted to. If they wanted to, they could turn it into a TV series. Although I don't know, I haven't watched every single like BBC miniseries or movie or anything. Which reminds me, I really hope that because we got rid of HBO, and I don't think my parents are gonna buy HBO Max. I don't think they're gonna subscribe to it because we don't have regular TV anymore. We have YouTube TV now. But I really hope, we do have TV, but but I really hope I hope that. I was just thinking that I like watching it. I'm not a big fan of the books 1 and 2 of his Dark Materials, but I did like the first book, and I like the first season of his Dark Materials. So, and I know it's like a British show mixed with HBO, so we don't have HBO anymore. But I'm hoping it's on BBC America. When they say BBC, I hope it also means that it's on BBC America too, because I like the first season. I want to watch it. But anyway. But yeah, today was the first time, this afternoon was the first time I actually took in the words I was reading, and I wasn't like lost in it wasn't just a word to me. I actually was taking in the scene and that is being described to me. Just, again, I love these editions, and I'll show you the other ones in a little bit. So today, when we went to the pool this evening, I all of a sudden decided to go ahead and start my reread of this. Although I might go on Goodreads and see, now that I switched it to this edition that I'm reading, I'm gonna check on Goodreads. I might check on Goodreads and see where it would be in this edition. But I am. Oh my god, yeah, that picture makes him even look. Okay, well, I'll get to that in a minute. So this is Nosferatu. Oh, I could say there was at one point I was able to say it. Nosferatu, which, if you're familiar with the very first vampire movie, because there was no movie made until I think the 30s or 40s of Dracula, the Bram Stoker book, the Bram Stoker novel. But I think in the 1920s, the Nosferatu, it was the first vampire movie, and he's not Dracula. That's what this book is. That's what the title of this book refers to. And I had gotten this from the library, a hardback edition, because the library only carries hardback, sometimes paperbacks too, or softback, depending on what you want to call it. But they normally, so my first reading of it was a hardback from the library. And then I finally, after months, and after like a year, like maybe a year or two, I finally bought it at the store. And this is the TV show tie-in edition, starring Zachary Quinto, and I don't know if he's, and Ashley Cummings. I don't know if Zachary Quinto is supposed to be the villain. I think he's supposed to be the villain, because the villain is the other main character, Charles Mance. So I don't know if Zachary Quinto is supposed to play him, which that'd be very interesting. Although I always thought that, unless he's playing the guy, that is helping Charles Mance. Although I think it would be more interesting if he was Manx. But at the same time, Manx is supposed to be described when we first meet him in the beginning of the book, where we see where he is. In the beginning, he's really, really old. But I think it'd be interesting if Zachary Quinto played Charles Mance. But there are some other younger male characters that are main characters in it. Like the guy who's kind of helping Charles Mance. But anyway, so this is basically, you have our main character, Victoria McQueen, and she has a knack for finding things in very mysterious ways, and with help from her bike and being able to cross in between dimensions. And she ends up crossing paths with this guy named Charles Mance, who will basically takes children that he feels like their parents are being mean to them, and he takes them in his Wraith car to Christmasland, where they never come back and are made essentially immortal. And it's really creepy. I really liked it. I mean, I definitely feel like I need to be in a certain kind of mood to read this. And it's a long chunky book, so I feel like I could go ahead and get started now. I mean, I don't want to wait until fall or autumn. I just want to start reading it now. But yes, I had been meaning to get it, and it took me a long time to get it because I was just not feeling it at the time. But anyway, a few minutes ago I just noticed something. This is the author Joe Hill, and he is the son of Stephen King, and I think his author last name comes from the author's actual middle name, because he don't want to be associated with his already famous father. I mean, it's not that he has a bad relationship with Stephen King, but he wanted to be of his own merit. He wanted his work to show he didn't want to, I think he was concerned, he didn't want it to be like, oh, that's Stephen King's son, so that's the only reason I'm going to check it out, because he happens to be the son of a famous horror author. But I was looking at the back, and oh my god, if you look at this back picture, he does look exactly like his dad. I mean, he is just a carbon copy. It's like basically they took a picture of Stephen King and then put like this wig on him and, gave him the beard and stuff. That's sorry, I'm covering it. See, he looks exactly like his dad. And he writes like his dad too. Now I know that his other son Owen also writes, and he wrote Sleeping Beauties with him. And then I don't think Naomi, he has a daughter named Naomi, but she does not write. And I think his wife, Tabby, also is a writer. But Naomi, I think, is the only one that doesn't write in the family. But he does, Joe, his writing style reminds me of his dad's. But, I'm going to start this. And I'm going to restart this, or I might look on Goodreads and see, now that I have it in this edition, I wonder, I was going to say how far I am, but I might just want to, I think I might go ahead with the reread, starting from the beginning, because, there's things I feel like I forgot, So those are the three I brought with me, or at least, well, these are the two that I brought with me to the pool this evening, along with Assassin's Quest, which is over here on the floor. But so along with this one, I bought 3 other books in that fancy edition. And I got Jane Eyre the time before the last. I had bought Jane Eyre the time before the last time I went, I believe. Like it was between, and I have been meaning to get it because I think I've told the story before that I let my cousin borrow my mass market paperback and I never got it back. And it's not like I hang out with her all the time anyway, and I'm not gonna, be like, I want my copy back when And I've kind of definitely got more interested in these larger paperbacks than mass market. And I still will buy paperback. I will still, if that's what's available, I will still buy mass market paperback because it is cheap and small. It's easier to travel with. But these are, these are pretty good to travel with too. The books that are hard to travel with are like the hardbacks. But I will still bring hardbacks with me, when we go visit family and stuff, to bring my own books if the book I want to read is a hardback. But the other 3 books I bought recently, other than that I bought the same time I bought Nosferatu, were these books, these editions. As I'm talking, you guys, I keep hearing in my head, I don't know if you guys ever watched this, but on ABC there was that one series called Gallivant. What's kind of like a parody on those medieval hero stories where heroes go on quest and save the damsel in distress and stuff. Like, it's been compared to, Monty Python in the story. Like, that's the kind of humor. So I had just all of a sudden had the urge to watch it again after a few years. It's still on Netflix. Sadly, it only got 2 seasons. It got canceled before it got season 3. Season 3 there's so much potential for an interesting storyline. Because it has an ending, but it kind of suggests there could potentially have been more if given the chance, but it got canceled. So that's probably why they made sure that it had a good ending. But if they didn't get canceled, they would have something to work with to continue the story. That's what I feel like why it ended the way it did. Sadly, though, one of the actors from it, some of the actors have moved on, of course, now at this point, because it's been a few years, and then one of the actors, actor who played the King Richard, he had a stroke, which I think he's okay now. I think he's in a good place now, although I don't know. Sometimes when you have a stroke, it affects your ability to speak, I think, and sometimes you can't, it affects your bodily functions and all that, so I don't know if he can still act or not. But that was Timothy Amundsen, the guy he was in the show Psych, and he played Kane on Supernatural. But yeah, I'm hearing a song that was a reprise of a song from season 2 in my head right now. It keeps playing in my head, and it sounds better in my head, and I can sound like the actual as good as the actor in my head. But I know in real life I just can't sing. But anyway, as I'm filming this, I'm starting to hear it in my head right now. Okay, so you guys know that I had started David Copperfield, and I had this mass market paperback. I had this edition of it. Although now though, I'm going to get rid of this edition because I ended up buying this edition of David Copperfield. I was debating it, but then I was like, I was standing at the cashier, and, luckily no one was behind me. But I was like, what the heck, I'm gonna buy it. So I ended up buying it. So I bought, which means I got 3 books in this kind of edition, this kind of published edition. But, which makes 3 Dickens novels in this style. But it's basically, it's described as kind of close to an autobiography of Dickens himself and his life. You have our main character, David Copperfield, and it's about his life from when he was born to adulthood and to the point where he becomes a famous, I believe he becomes an author in the end of the story. But it's all the people he meets in his life, in his relationships, romantic wise and platonic wise. And I just thought, it might be compared to, because sometimes a book like this, as small as it is, it has really minuscule print. It's just sometimes hard to get into and to read. And it's even harder when you're tired and you've gotten up early and you stay up late the night before, or you're in your bed deciding to read, but then you're as soon as your head touches the pillow, it's like. But so I thought, and it's with small print, it's even harder. So then I feel like having a bigger size book with a bigger print helps. It will potentially help a lot. So this should help. I really appreciate that because in this case, there are chapter titles. Dickens is an author who writes chapter titles in his works. Oliver Twist did that. The Pickwick Papers does that. I'm wondering if it's just that's something he did with his earlier works. Although no, Bleak House does that too. But maybe in his earlier works the titles are a little more straightforward and basically summing up what goes on in the chapter. Exactly what's going to happen in the chapter, because Oliver Twist, for instance, had really long titles, and the Pickwick Papers has long titles for each chapter too. Now these are a little shorter, so that should actually help for me to find out where I left off. Um, oh, and oh, does this have illustrations? Oh my god, this one has illustrations in it. Let me find. Okay, page 38. Oh my god, that's so cool. And so this has illustrations in it. You can see they're black and white, but still, that's cool. That reminds me of in Oliver Twist, the library copy. That's another one I thought about buying, this kind of edition of Oliver Twist, because I did kind of like. It's not my favorite Dickens, but I did like it. And although I'm sure my mom would be like, if you don't like it, you don't need to buy it. But I think but like everybody else on YouTube, on BookTube, sometimes you just want to have that edition just to have it, because we're all very materialistic people. No, we're not that bad. I feel like people on BookTube are not that bad. There are some people that are worse when it comes to materialism. But, and at least I'm not one of those people who, do what you do, no disrespect for people who do this, but I personally don't get the whole appeal of buying multiple copies, especially if they're foreign editions. I mean, I get they're really pretty, but if you can't read that language, then I don't understand what would be the point of having it. And I personally feel like it takes up space if you buy multiple copies of the same book. Just get the edition that you really love. Like, try to get the edition that you love. I mean, maybe if you want to buy a nice edition of that book, because, like, I have those fancy Barnes & Noble books that are, like, a lot of them are omnibus editions of different classic authors. So I have those. But, I've almost felt guilty that I asked for those, because I don't ever really crack those open. Those are just for display. They're aesthetically pleasing. Because, let's face it, those are not practical. Those are hard you can't travel with those, and sometimes they're just uncomfortable to read because they're so big, and, again, minuscule print. So, but, like, for instance, I have that, that bind of the Barnes & Noble omnibus edition of all of Jane Austen's novels. But in that case, it's like, I'm not and I know this is blasphemous. It's a sin to not love Jane Austen, but I'm not a huge fan. I mean, I like her books, but that's also because she writes romance. So, in country life. So, yes, some of the plots are definitely are intriguing, because, how she talks about society, her books are critiques of society, and that definitely helps make them more appealing to me. But, and, I have favorites out of the Jane Austen novels I've read. I figure it's not, I don't need small paperback editions. If I want to read her novels, I'll just put up with that. I'll just read that edition, even if it's kind of a hassle to read that one, But, so I ended up buying this edition because it's easier to read and it's bigger print. And it's not too huge as far as going when you're traveling to visit family like my sister or my grandma. It won't be too much of a hassle to bring it with me in my bag, especially if I'm bringing multiple, like 6 to 10 books at the same time, because I can never narrow it down and make a decision. And then the other books were actually kind of inspired by Mary from, what is her channel name? Mary Among Books or something. I can't remember what country she's from. She's actually from Europe, I believe. Somewhere in Europe, I don't remember. Forgive me. I know that her first name is Mary, and she's really pretty, by the way. She's like a really pretty booktuber. But, she was talking about how she has really enjoyed Thomas Hardy, and I was not happy with Jude the Obscure. That was a bit too much for me, but I have other Thomas Hardy books, and then I decided, and then, when I got Jane Eyre, I saw Far From the Maddening Crowd. I remember I liked I hadn't seen the whole movie, but I liked the movie of what I saw so far. And I had been meaning to buy this, and oh my god, I did not. This is a silhouette of a woman, of our main character, I think, of the main female lead in this. I just noticed that. This is, like, I think her silhouette, the main image, and then think these are two of the men that are interested, because I know that she has three suitors that like her. One is like a soldier, one is a farmer, and then there's, I think, one more guy that is interested in her. So I knew that, but I didn't want to. So I didn't want to give up on Thomas Hardy just because I didn't like Jude the Obscure, and I think this is one of his closer to happier novels. I think it might not be this one. I do not know, but one of them. And I was like, when I saw, Mary from Mary Among Books. I wish I remember her channel name. I remember she brought up Thomas Hardy, and I can't remember which of his books that she was reading. I don't think it was this one. I think it was a different one. And I commented on her video. I was like, I almost bought Far From the Madding Crowd by Thomas Hardy, but I decided not to. I passed up on it. And so finally, I had asked my mom when she had some errands to run last week if she could drop me off there, and surprisingly she agreed to drop me off there because, while she ran her errands. And I finally was like, okay, I'm just gonna buy this one. This is one of the classics I'm gonna buy. And these are really cheap. It's like $5.97 or something. Sometimes $6.97, but still, I mean, compared to, it may not be as cheap as like this book, which is like $2 or $3. I mean, that's the only reason why I still buy mass market paperback editions, because the Roast Office, the one bookstore that's within walking distance of me, they sell mass market paperbacks for like $2 or $3. So, if I can get some of the ones I'm interested, even if it's just a mass market paperback, then I'm gonna get it. So I bought this one. I love the cover. I've always been a big fan of green. Green's one of my favorite colors. That actually was, for a while, considered that the favorite color for me, because it's my birthstone's emeralds. I was like, oh, it's my favorite color. But then, because of one of my favorite, I was a collector of, dolls. I collected dolls that I played with, and including Barbies. I was one of those girls. And one of my dolls was a Magic Attic doll, it comes with a book. It's kind of like an American Girl dolls, where they have the doll that you can play with, and then they have a book where it's their different stories and adventures they've been on. Well, there are Magic Attic dolls, and they are these group of, I think they're supposed to be middle school age, and they discover one of I don't remember whose attic it was, but there was this attic they would always visit, and there was always like costumes and stuff in that attic that they would put on and try on. All of a sudden, it would once they put it on, it would transport them to another time period, and it was all about their experiences there and like things that would happen to them while they were there. And both my sister and I had it, although I played with my dolls more than my sister played with hers. She had one of them. I think she had Allison, who was blonde, and she had and I had Megan, who was she was a ginger, she was a redhead, or strawberry blonde possibly, and her favorite color was yellow. So I decided, oh, actually now that's my favorite color, because it was my doll's favorite color. So I was very fickle when it comes to favorite colors. Although now I say that I really have more than one. I don't have one favorite color. I have more than one favorite color. I don't just have one. But green is on there still. Still one of my favorites. And then I went ahead and also picked up. So I got 3 of these editions of classics, and I ended up buying this one, Silas Marner. And I was inspired to get this one because Olive from a book Olive she will do like discussions on Wishbone episodes, in case those of you who grew up in the 90s. Wishbone, I mean, if you remember, Wishbone was the series about the dog, and he would, I can't remember what kind of dog he was. She says it every time in her videos when she talks about she explains what Wishbone is. And he was a dog who would basically narrate classics, and the classic stories would run parallel to the modern day storyline with Wishbone and the family his family. And Wishbone is always plays the main character. and they covered this one, Silas Marner by George Eliot. And I don't remember exactly what. I think it's this one is about a guy with a fortune that he's trying to protect or something, and someone steals his fortune, steals his money or something like that. But it's like one of those stories where you learn a lesson, you realize that money can't buy happiness, although it's nice to have. In how his wanting to protect his money prevented him from really connecting with the real world. And she did a really good review comparing the episode to the actual novel and seeing how well they covered it. Now the problem with Wishbone is they only get 30-minute episodes, maybe even less than that. And it's a kids show, so they have to make it easy to follow and understand, and they can't give every little detail. They cover things stories like Sherlock Holmes, The Three Musketeers, Count of Monte Cristo. I'm trying to think of other classics. Obviously, this one. And some of them just they can't cover everything because like Count of Monte Cristo, there's so much going on in there, such political intrigue and stuff, and they cover even less than a movie version of a classic that's that big. And this one, what's nice, the beauty of this one is it looks pretty short. It doesn't look that long. So they probably had an easier time of covering the whole story, which I got the impression from Olive that's the case. That because of its length, they were able to get really close to the actual story. Now, of course, there are things that they can't cover. They couldn't, especially in the 90s, that they couldn't cover in Kid Show. Now, I don't know if there was anything like that in this novel. I don't remember if she said anything like that. If she said that there was anything in the novel that they could not cover because it's a kid show. But I decided to end up buying it as well because I already have George Eliot's Middlemarch. And I bought that one. I was inspired to buy that one day and start that one because Jen from Insert Literary Pun loves that novel. I think it's one of her favorites. But it's a long one. It's a chunky novel, so I still haven't gone back to it, but I do want to. I want to get back to it. And that's another one that I've got, just like with Count of Monte Cristo, I got pretty far in it. I just need to get even farther and come at least close to finishing it. And I might have a better chance of doing that with Count of Monte Cristo. But I wonder if that should be one of the Count of Monte Cristo should be one that I should read at least maybe 100 pages during Tome Topple, because hopefully I'm assuming that Sam from Thoughts on Tomes will do a new Tome Topple soon. Although with what's going on in the world, she might, who knows how she's gonna feel about Tome Topple, but she's gonna feel like doing it or not. Although some people, I think if they don't, but anyway, so I bought those, and then like I said, I bought Nosferatu as well. And every time I buy a new book, though, even though I like to savor it at the same time when I have it in my hands, I almost want to read it right that second. But I also try not to read it right away because I have so many books I've had for a long time that I need to read, like American Gods and Count of Monte Cristo. I need to read both of those, especially Count of Monte Cristo. I think that's even older as far as being on my shelf versus like American Gods, which I got around the time right before we moved here, I think, or when we started thinking about moving here. And then Count of Monte Cristo I got when I was still living in Maryland. So, years before moving here was an option. But, yeah, so I love those editions. So I'm probably gonna get rid of that Mass Market on favorite copy book because I don't personally, if you have more than one copy of your favorite book, that's great. It's you do you. But I personally don't, because I want to make room for other books because I'm not going to stop buying books. And as for Lady Midnight, I still want to get back into Cassandra Clare's world. But it's just, I think it's just been kind of hard to get back into it. And I feel like the type of writing I like, even though I don't I try not to put emphasis on writing style. There are times when I'm reading a book like this and I feel like the writing isn't challenging enough for me. But, at least I got to chapter 6 in this book. The other problem is that Cassandra Clare chapters are really long, so it's not as, I feel like it's taking me, I'm sure if I just kept going, the pace would probably pick up, and I would get so into it that I would want to keep going. I hope that's the case. But, I have the second book in the trilogy, so I'm not going to give up. I'm not going to DNF her, I'm going to keep going because I want to get back, because I did enjoy this world. I had a good time in this world when I was reading Mortal Instruments and Infernal Devices. And it was kind of fun to, read Shadowhunter Academy, Tales from the Shadowhunter Academy, and then the Bane Chronicles, although the Bane Chronicles was a little bit of disappointment. But anyway, so I'm not going to give up. I'm going to keep going. I'm just taking my sweet time with it. And I'm just kind of in a different mood right about now. And I'm trying to keep this mood going because I don't want to risk another slump. Like I said, I know there's nothing wrong with a slump if that it happens, but I'm always been proud that I've never felt like I've been in a slump before, but I did get a little bit of scare with because I was obsessing over a TV show. But like I said, as far as the TV show, I still love the TV show. It's not like all of a sudden I don't like it anymore. It's just now I'm moving on and getting back into my old other favorite stuff. And, it will be like a long time before the new season starts. Although I do love thinking of the fact that all those people, I'm telling you, as the TV show I'm referring to, this is the Charmed reboot, and I kind of love the idea of being able to say, all those people who were saying, oh, it's going to get canceled, and there were even videos on YouTube how it was going to get canceled, and it's like, well, guess what, dudes? It's getting a season 3, so nah. Because I don't see anything wrong. It's different, but people are never happy. Like, there's always gonna, it's never gonna compare to the original show or something, there's always something that, they do too much of this or they don't do enough of that. It's like, make up your mind, people. You're never gonna be happy. And I think at this point, a lot of times, screenwriters and stuff are like, I give up, I'm just gonna do my thing, and if people like it, that's awesome. If they don't, yeah, I'll be sad, but I can live with it. I'm not gonna die if if this show fails or whatever. But I'm just really loving the show right now, and I want it going for a long time, and right now I'm basically just watching videos of my favorite couple, and I'm not writing fan fiction per se, but I cannot remember what it's called when you don't write a whole story, but you write a little scene or something. I want to say the word is something that starts with an O, outlet or something, but it's something where you write a little brief, or I could be totally wrong, it might not be a word at all, but where you just write little scenes here and there. That's what I'm doing, because I'm writing the scenes that we don't get on the show, or we don't know what's going to happen. I'm thinking about scenes for the finale, because the show, they had to stop with this whole pandemic. They had to stop filming at episode 19, so we only have episode 19 up to episode 19, and then they're going to do the last 3 episodes of season 2 to start off for season 3, and then they'll go into season 3. And so I keep thinking, where is it going to go? And I want to see all the major characters we met. I all want them to come together. Even the characters that are kind of antagonists to our main core group. The 3 main antagonists of the season. I kind of want them to work with the Charmed ones and their White Lighter, because I think that would be very interesting dynamics, and there would be lots of tension, because throughout this whole season, these characters have been butting heads and not getting along. There's rivalries and tension between these characters, and relationship drama and stuff. And I want to see all these characters but be forced to work together and defeat the main antagonist of the whole season, the overarching villain of the season. It would just be it would be very entertaining and very, really juicy and just fun to watch and see these characters butt heads, Although, as long as they don't ruin my ship, they don't blow holes in my ship, then that's the only one. That's the only thing I'm concerned about is my ship gets ruined in the by the season finale, because it's the episode 19 ended up on a cliffhanger that could potentially destroy my ship, and I'm not the only one who loves this ship, and it's like a lot of people's comments on YouTube are like, they can't give us this couple for like 2.5 episodes and then destroy it, because I'm not, and I've talked about this before, that I feel like you can't, like, I know that there are some like screenwriters who love the angst and love to destroy the fans and drive us crazy, but there's only so much we can take. That's why I quit. That's part of why I quit watching Once Upon a Time, because there's just too much, and I did not like the writing. The writing was messed up, in my opinion. Now, of course, that's just my opinion. If you are watching my channel and you happen to love Once Upon a Time, then that's fine. Don't listen to me. But it's just my opinion. But I personally did not like the direction of the writing. I thought it was too much angst in that show. It just wasn't even angst that made any sense. But like I said, but also to be fair, I stopped watching after season 3. I didn't even get into season 4, especially when I realized that, oh, Frozen just came out. It's so popular. Let's just go ahead and grab onto it and use it for a show. And then, like, there's things that show does that, like, they're like, oh, we can get the kids to watch it if we have Frozen in there. And then there's stuff that they do in the show that's like, is this even a family show anymore? Is this even something that kids can watch? I mean, in fact, some of the actors, like the actor that plays my favorite character, he has kids, and he didn't want his kids to watch it. And so it's like, is this even family friendly anymore? But then they do things like, let's get Frozen because it's something that we get kids to watch the show. But again, that's just my opinion, and again, I stopped watching it after season 3, so maybe I can't really justify. But anyway, yeah. And so I bring that show up because I feel like it went too far with the angst. And it's just too much, and you can't just, and like, people get tired of the will, like, yes, they will continue to watch it because they want their favorite couple together, but people get tired of the whole will they, won't they, like, people, I think a lot of people, they still are, I think a lot of people kind of got bored with, like, Ross and Rachel from Friends, because they were that kind of couple, the will they, won't they couple. But anyway, so I'm going to stop now because I'm kind of getting off topic here. I mean, I did get off topic. So, and I think I've already talked about this before, so I'm going to stop now. And, so if you guys like this video, be sure and give a thumbs up. Click subscribe if you haven't already. Click the bell notification below if you want to know when I'm going to post new videos. And I hope you are enjoying your reading. And I hope things, are going well for you. I know a lot of crap is going on in the world, and I hope you're not one of those people who's dealing with the worst of it. And I hope you are continuing to do what you feel is right to help what's going on in the world, like doing what you can to help it, and let's hope by next year things will be in maybe not great, maybe not an ideal, but at least maybe something that we can will change and get better, even if we can't make it go away completely, even if we can't entirely put a band-aid on it and fix it and then be like, oh, all better, because the world does not work that way. But at least we'll be in a decent place by next year. Alright, bye.